Can the characters stay alive? Can we stay awake? Hello and welcome to Rotted Review of the Day, and today is Subscriber Suggestion Sunday, and today's movie comes to us from Scott Daniels, who suggested that I watch and review 2006's Stay Alive. The premise of this one follows the character of Hutch, who is a 20-something that happens to have a friend who is informing him that he's beta testing this new video game, this new horror-based video game called Stay Alive. And that evening, apparently, his friend meets with his demise. Looks like he is murdered along with two other people in the house. And in investigating this, Hutch, along with his friends, well, not really investigating so much as kind of stumbling across things, while taking his friend's last possessions and so forth, including the video game of Stay Alive. They decide as tribute, instead of pouring one out for old Blue, they go ahead and decide to play the game in a odd multiplayer kind of setup there. And the game starts out with not letting you go anywhere, not even to the main menu, until you verbally recite a poem, a stanza, a journal entry, what have you, basically a chant. And once you do, then you're able to play the game. And they quickly find out that if you die in the game, then you die in real life in the same manner shortly thereafter. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say this. This was not necessarily a bad movie. The worst thing about it, honestly, was the fact that it really aged about as well as a peeled avocado. It feels dated. And I think that was ultimately its biggest sin. And I'm going to get into how it could have avoided that in just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and throw up the scores here. Each of the individual scores are worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. So this movie played with some mechanics that kind of dealt with some of the gray area between the video game and the real world, and I actually kind of liked how it employed that. Unfortunately, the rest of all the horror elements within this were well-worn, predictable tropes that really didn't offer anything new. I still found it entertaining. I still found it enjoyable, but that was less about the horror aspects of the movie and any attempted mythos or scare or anything along those lines, and more about the development of the characters. The intention of this one, you'll notice that it has a pretty low score. This is one of those films that the main character seems to be a bit bland. I honestly don't really remember the Hutch character so much as Hutch's friends that are in this with him. And it's a bit of a shame. I really didn't have a whole lot of people to latch onto as far as a protagonist goes. And the mythos behind the video game and its creation and so on, it really didn't offer a whole lot there. There just wasn't a lot of meat on this one. The mystery was half put together and not very interesting at that. But getting into how it's stated, obviously this deals with technology, it deals with video games, and it has a lot of screenshots and video game gameplay happening throughout the film. And yes, the graphics are dated, and yes, the gameplay is weird. Nothing about this really holds up so well 13 years after the fact. However, that's not that's not something that couldn't have been avoided. And yes, the graphics are always going to be dated 13 years after the fact, but that doesn't mean the movie has to suffer for it. It is the onus of the movie and not the audience to make technological integration age appropriately and gracefully. There are plenty of old movies out there that deal with technology that, although the technology, yes, might be dated, the movie itself is not. War Games is a great example for that. Sneakers is another great example for that. These are movies that are timeless in their own right, even though the technology that is at the very core of them is dated. And the one thing that those kind of movies and this kind of movie really needs to do and do well is treat the technology portion of this with respect. It's the first thing that is going to date the movie is if you are taking shortcuts and taking liberties and not treating the technological source material with respect, considering that it is at the absolute core of the film. It is not just an ancillary side piece. It is what the entirety of the film is based on. It is the foundation, and it has to be built well, and it has to be built with reverence. And this movie really didn't do that. There were a lot of really silly things going on with this one in the realm of technology. And again, that's the movie's foundation. It's supposed to be what holds the rest of it up. But there was just so many holes in this as far as the technology and the video game aspects of this that you wound up with just a million plot holes. First of all, the source of the game, without getting into too spoilery of a territory here, let's just say that it's kind of created by an unknown source. I'll leave it at that, an unknown source. And why would this unknown source need a beta tester in the first place? If a worldwide big console licensed release is possible, why in the world would they need a small-scale PC beta tester to kick the movie off? How in the world did they possibly do multiplayer within this context? There was just a whole lot. I mean, if they had a singular disc and that's how the movie is portrayed, and a lot of this could have been solved with one or two lines of dialogue. He's a beta tester, so he has a cracked exe file. I'll distribute it amongst all of us, and then we'll all play it on our individual systems. Fine. That would have worked. But it really didn't go that route. It just kind of glossed over things, and you really kind of got the sense that you wound up with a situation where the writer of the movie is saying, I'm having trouble getting from this point to this point, and I just need some time to kind of flesh it out. And they're saying, damn it, Higgins, we're in the middle of casting. We almost got Malcolm in the Middle going here. We need the script by 2 p.m. today. And that's it. And that's all they cared about. And that is kind of what showed throughout this movie, is it just felt rushed and forced, and it didn't treat the technological aspects of it that is the foundation with reverence, and thus it feels dated and odd and out of place, and it creates way too many plot holes that it is difficult to overcome them. So, but getting into it, as far as what did work about this one, the characters did work. Again, the main character was a little bit nondescript, but it wasn't a bad performance. It wasn't a bad character. It was just a bit, here's our generic, tall brunette hero. Off we go with him. But the side characters really, really made this. Frankie Muniz is in this one. He did a fairly decent job. It's kind of a brainy, spastic character named Swink. But the real standout for me on this one was actor Jimmy Simpson, and that is one of the reasons that the acting score is so high, is his character of Phineas, I thought was one of the best side characters that really elevated every scene that he was in. I was loving every moment that he happened to be in a scene, and Jimmy Simpson really sold the character well. I haven't really seen a whole lot that he's been in that I haven't liked, and this is one of the great examples. This is kind of up there with Matt Lillard's performance in 13 Ghosts. Just every time he was on the screen, it was full of energy and full of passion, and I did love it. The aged graphics of the gameplay are not taken into account with the technical score here. They are going to be aged, and they are going to be pixelated, and they're going to be heavily blocked polygons. It's just expected and natural, and I'm not going to mark it off any points for that because that would be a disservice to simply the reality of having a 13-year-old movie about video games. But you may notice that the technical score is 13 out of 25. That's just because it was about average. There was really nothing spectacular about this one. It was just kind of average. So that gives us a total score of 49 out of 100 points. I didn't dislike this movie. I did find it entertaining. I just wish that it treated the technological aspects of it with a bit more reverence, and focused more on developing the mythos behind it, the actual storyline of what was going on, the history behind the evil entities, and so on and so forth. I just wish it was fleshed out a bit more and led to a more satisfying all-around mystery, beginning, middle, and end, and ultimately having less of a feeling of just having characters on the rails until they meet whatever end they're going to. So that should about do it. That's my review of 2006's Stay Alive. Thank you very much for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.